And I would encourage you from the very start. Let's be interactive in the fact that this is. You can just put the extras down there. If there are questions, and I hope that there are, that you would just stop me, and I can hear the other rooms as well. So you don't even have, the good thing about high-def video conferencing is that it's interactive, both audio and video. And so it's real time, and you all will be able to interrupt, and it will not shut down the system in any way. So with that being in mind, with the 45 minutes or so, and I'll move rapidly today. Today I'll cover this at the 50,000-foot level. I'm an electrical engineer. I love the geek, but it is not the appropriate conversation when I'm not speaking, for the purpose of just trying to nail something down that's extremely technical. So today, my goal is, if I use acronyms or buzzwords that simply make no sense, stick your hand up, and I will backtrack and explain. The challenge with this technology, everything that you see in the rooms, is that there are a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of buzzwords, and it makes for people very uncomfortable when they're talking about the technology, or trying to decide whether they should even use it, because very candidly, it's embarrassing to everybody, including me, when I'm asking about subjects that I'm not intimately familiar with. It's embarrassing when you don't know the question, nor do you know the buzzwords. So as a result, you don't ask the questions and you don't engage in conversations. I do the same. My goal here is to provide you good, basic understanding of three technologies that we will hit on today. You've seen them, you're seeing them demonstrated, and there's no way that we can go in depth, but there is a way that we can provide for you at least a top-level view. We'll talk about video conferencing, and that will be the first one that we'll engage in because it's the most common one, and somebody's calling in. Somebody's calling in. Trying to figure out who's calling in.
Mike, it doesn't look like anybody's calling in. I think your laptop might have gone to sleep, or I could be wrong. But
okay. Well, there's a ClearSea client that just called in. So.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Steve. I don't have a picture. That's my brother Steve, who is the general manager here. He's at Busch Gardens in Florida right now on vacation, and he's probably calling in on his phone or something. But at any rate, we'll demonstrate the BYOD, the bring your own device technology, in a little while, because people do not expect to have to be confined to an infrastructure room like this, talking about things. But let's start off with the real basics. I really would appreciate, and this would be a great time. I'm going to explain who we are and stuff, but the most important thing here is I'd like to know what would be beneficial for you all to get. If you could walk away with here with one or two things about video conferencing, streaming, or digital signage, what would that be? And I want to make sure I cover those. So I would appreciate anybody reflecting what their goal is. Because you had to have something to take a full 2 hours of your time, come over here for, I hope it's a decent lunch. But what are some of the things you'd like to have? Anybody in the other rooms? Yes.
How do you connect video streaming with the internet general public to be able to communicate, market, share information about your product or business?
Okay. I'll make sure that I cover that when we get to the streaming section. So streaming to the public via the internet and the bring your own device, i.e. iPhones, Androids, and all that stuff. I got it. Others, please. Okay.
Mike, can you talk about the benefits of two-way video with respect to engagement as opposed to just strictly one-way video that a lot of people use?
Yes, I certainly will. Thank you very much. We'll speak as we go through video conferencing about what the difference between streaming or a technology that's driven to be one way, where I am speaking to the masses, which is more of a streaming application. Those people that there weren't enough seats, those people are listening. Now they can type in questions and they can interact, but it's in a 5 to 7 second delay, and so it's awkward for them. So that type of technology is best tooled for a one-to-many type of thing. The video conferencing in the two-way environment is geared for when you need to have conversation. And there's a realistic limit to how many, it's like, how many people can you have in a productive meeting? You have a room. I was in Atlanta this Tuesday, and I was designing a large room, and they want to know, how can we be immersive in a room to conduct video conferencing with 40 people in one room and 12 in another and 12 in another? And they were wanting me to give them this magic answer, and the answer is you can't be. That's too many people with too many possibilities to have a high level of interaction, even if it was in person. So we'll talk about that. Others that have a question, please?
What about tips? Like when you're doing video conferencing, things you should or shouldn't do. I'm sure you have a lot of experience. So.
I do. I start off with what do you wear and what do you not wear. You always wear clothes. I reflect on something here that is painful, but it's a reality. But you do know that most of the development work for streaming video and technology and stuff came from the porn industry. It was early funded in the earliest years by that cash flow, which is a negative to think about it, but it's a truthful statement relative to the history of this industry. I start off with yes, there are tips, and the most important one is to make sure that you, the person, are prepared for the experience that a video conference really is and what it's not. It starts out with how you prepare in your presentation of yourself. I am certainly not a model. I am more of a distraction. When I played football in the sports, they sent me in to hurt people. I didn't do anything. I was on the line, so it was just discouraging. You never got the girls that way. It was always important. But the fact of the matter is, if you are standing in front of a video camera, you want to avoid harsh contrasts like black and whites. It would be better to have colors, and you want to wear light blues and other things that are just not strictly black and white, because if you wear shirts or blouses with really fine patterns or really fine stripes, it creates moire patterns on the other end, and it's very tough, and it takes up more bandwidth. So we'll talk about other tips and things. Other questions?
Mike?
Yes?
How would this compare to something like a GoToMeeting, or is it very similar?
We will, thank you for that question. How does it compare to Skype, GoToMeeting, WebEx? We'll talk about that. These are currently extensively used out there in the world of business communication, and we need to know what those technologies are, how they interface traditional or standards-based, and that is the real key. I want you to catch it. Standards-based video conferencing is different than the Skypes and the WebExes and even the Link 2013 interfaces. So I know those are some buzzwords, but to others, you know what I'm speaking of. And there's no negative. I'm going to speak about it because Skype is free, and for a one-to-one conversation with your child or even with your people in business, if you can tolerate the inconsistencies that Skype has, it's the best choice. The same thing is true when you're presenting a WebEx or a GoToMeeting. The little thumbnail picture that you can produce of the person that is providing the presentation or the other people that are interacting, that's a whole bunch better than nothing. And it's great. But even today, one of the things that, and you tell me if you can identify with this, but when you're in a WebEx or when you're in a GoToMeeting or even a Skype, do you not leave there a little bit tired? And you probably don't know why. You leave there tired because the audio quality is a real struggle for your ears and your brain to process. And it's a really tiring factor, and it takes away on the long term. So it's really great for social communications, but in a business environment where you're leaning on every word or that PowerPoint slide or whatever, the audio becomes a real challenge. And so real video conferencing produces HD audio as well. So we'll talk about that. Others who have questions? Yes.
It looks like there's a different frame rate in each room. The upper left-hand corner, does it have a different frame rate than the other two? Because we seem to be flowing very well, and the upper left is a little...
The facts are those are generational differences. The one in the not in the people, they're the same generation. Carla here is responsible for that remark. She had to see. You see, there's certain you all could have seen it if you were watching, because even nonverbal communication comes through there, and it was strictly nonverbal. It was generational. All of us old people. But the fact of the matter is that we've been in this video conferencing business a long time, and there are generational differences. This is the most modern room, and there are two other rooms that are older generations by 6 months and a year and a half. And the one that you're seeing a little bit less is more a result of lighting than it is of the codec itself. So lighting plays a major factor relative to the quality.
Might be another... Sorry.
The six screens that we do? Okay.
They do, and each individual. Yes? What kind of sign have you got up? Oh, okay. Okay, we've got another person moving in. All right.
I would think a major advantage to using the upper scale video conferencing like what we have here over Skype is a frame rate issue.
Yes.
I mean, just like audio, video, we're in a world of video technology. People are watching videos every day and such an alarming rate. And not only video, or not only audio, but video, I mean, to capture someone's attention, to keep them engaged, the bottom screen is amazing. I've got a video background. That looks pretty darn good for video conferencing.
And it's color matched. We have studio lighting in here, and it's designed to provide that experience. So the great question, is there a difference in the technology difference? The thing that most often, and good English. We will get into the gotchas of digital signage, and we'll talk about the things that directly impact frame rate and the quality. So great question. Others? I mean, this is as good as a seminar, guys, because I'm very comfortable making sure that I hit what you want to talk about. Yes, Mike?
Mike, I still work with a couple of multi-location retailers. One has, say, 25 locations, one has 600. I guess I'm interested in the technology. Obviously you can't have 600 screens up there, but the flexibility of the technology to have one person in a location going maybe to all 600 locations, but then if that, after the call, the person wanted to get one-on-one, I don't know if that's part of today with just one store or 3 stores. I'm just interested in the flexibility of how the technology might apply in a multi-location retail environment.
Thank you. I'll tell you just after we get done. I really appreciate that. The facts are that video conferencing is a one-to-one or a one-to-few, and video streaming is a one-to-many. And right now, I can be streaming just off of my basic setup to 250 people just off of what I've got right now. Right now, I don't know how many are. I'm not seeing the back end of our logs right now, but one of my techs. This building is duplicated downstairs, so most of my people are downstairs, and my techs could be watching the interaction in the backside and tell me how many people are watching. But the reality is, yes, you can go one to many, one to hundreds, one to thousands. You're going to need to use a what is called a CDN, content distribution network, to be able to gain the power of bandwidth to be able to do that. We'll cover that in just a minute. But the CDN relationship is very, very important. So you can do that, yes. Others? Before we get started? Yes.
I'm kind of curious because right now we're looking at people in a conference room that are sitting around talking, which is what most businesses do. But a lot of times in my business, we have floor plans, we have presentations, we have materials. So how would that be affected in this type of a conferencing?
Great question. I've got your backpack right after we get done too. The fact of the matter is that you can hook up document cameras, and today there are many ways of doing it. I can take out my cell phone and participate by using its camera to bring in the picture just as another caller in the unit. But most often, for instance, Mountain National Bank, a bank that's in this area here, they use technology that we supplied them, HD video conferencing, every week as a means of doing loan reviews and stuff. And there's plats that they put out on the center of the table, and there's a camera in the ceiling that they zoom in, and on everybody in the call can evaluate the same criteria at the same time. So yes, documents can be shared. We're going to cover in just a few minutes. It's also used very aggressively in the emergency response environment, where you need to have somebody that's walking out and there's a power pole down or something like that, or there's a pressure valve off in a water system, whatever. Now, instead of the guy with the first guy on the scene, well, this is what I see, he can actually he can actually use the phone or the iPad or a Droid device and send them live dynamic pictures so that they can react on what they see. We do a lot of emergency operations centers, and video conferencing and the tools are necessary, and they're all the time pulling out maps and such as that. Did that answer? I will cover that. You had a question.
Video streaming. What is the required output? Do you have to have a T1 connection in order to stream it well?
It's a great question. The question was asked here about video streaming. And I forgot that everybody's listening, so we don't have to repeat the question. And I'm used to teaching Sunday school where I have to repeat it for everybody. The fact of the matter is that it is based on the quality of the stream that you want to put out. You can put out a max headroom little postage stamp, and it requires 128K of bandwidth, or you can put out full HD, and it requires 768 or 1 megabyte. And the fact of the matter is it's based on the receiving device. I mean, it's of no benefit to send a 3G device, a phone that's still on 3G, anything more than 300 to 400K of information. It's just simply not going to get there. So you have to pick a CDN, this content distribution network, has the ability to recognize its endpoint and scale accordingly. So generally, when you are in an environment, let's say you're in a church and you want to broadcast the sermon, and you want to send it to everybody through their computers and things of that nature, you have to determine what is the most common denominator for what they're going to be watching on a PC, a Mac, or whatever. Pick some reasonable resolution, 320 by 200. Whatever. You pick some reasonable resolution, and there's math that goes directly with that, and then you size your pipe, your internet connection, directly according to that. Most people that are going to hit hundreds don't do it with their own resources. They do it by streaming one live stream to a CDN, content distribution network, and the CDN then has the power to go like this. The same thing happens. Have you ever heard of dark websites? This is not ugly stuff. This is dark websites. In the event, I do a lot of speaking on the area of emergency operations centers and emergency notification integration. And today, people rely so heavily on these information transports and the website for information that in the event of like one of my customers, Eastman, if every employee on site there at Eastman and every family member and every related news source, they could crash a standard website with so many people hitting it at once. And so today's, and they have, and others do this, today as a matter of emergency preparedness, they make a relationship with a CDN in the back so that in the event of an emergency, their website becomes parallel or in synchronous with the CDN, so it can handle the ramp up of 10,000 people hitting the website, because what's good to transmit to something that doesn't get there. So, other questions? I may not even have to give a seminar. Just a FYI, multi some people ask the question, so I'll just answer it simplistically. What does a systems integrator do? An audio-visual systems integrator. There is no one answer to that. Lots of things, but we found the very best thing is to just tell you what we don't do. If you are looking to buy a flat panel or looking to buy a projector, we do work with those devices every single day. But we would tell you the best place to go buy that is Best Buy or somewhere online. Mm-hmm. Not because we don't want the business, but because they buy it at such volumes. The flip side of it is if you need entire rooms to work, you need entire campuses to work together, you need a lot of different things to work together. And you don't want to talk to someone that only has this square peg and it's got to fit in this round hole. That's what an integrator does. We're agnostic to the hardware. We're agnostic to the software. We ask a lot of questions and then sit back in a room and go, okay, the note says this person needs to do this, this, and this, and this. What group of equipment and software does that? That's what we do. Okay, so when you're sitting here, I'm not trying to sell you a life-size presentation. I'm really just trying to give you the tools to communicate. You know, we can communicate with life-sized Hamburg, Polycom, all standards-based, but an integrator does that. Let me just flip through this. Well, this is probably the best illustration here. We put puzzles together. We are people that take all of the different tools out there, audio, video, network, content, and we make them all sing together. That's what we do. We do all of these things. We provide video walls, and you know, we get to play with all the fun toys. These are kind of examples of some of the work that we do. We work with museums. That's the University of Tennessee. If you've never seen where the coaches sit at the University of Tennessee, when they are or when the athletic director comes in to speak to all the coaches, this is the room on the right there.
Hey, Mike.
Yo.
Could we ask you to make that screen larger for us? We don't have those, like that screen you just showed of your projects. All we see is a very small piece up in the upper right-hand corner.
Yes. Robert, which room are you in?
I'm in the digital signage boardroom.
Okay. Could you change the view in the other room for him, please?
Yeah. I'll be over there in just a minute.
Thank you. I happened to pick the 1 week where I've got people out on installations, and my brother's in Busch Gardens today with his wife. They're on vacation, so I picked a great week here. Let me back up to that so that when Robert comes into the room there, you can actually see it.
Yeah,
that's great. Oh, very good. The special buttons that's right there.
Okay.
Change the views for you. Very good stuff.
Other things that you're experiencing right now is because you can change dynamically the layout. And by the way, the people that are streaming this, that are at the end of the stream, there's a little box at the very end of their screen that if they want to watch only the person, they can watch just the person. If they want to watch just the PowerPoint, they can do that. If they want to see the combination, they can do that. But what I was referring to in this picture is that's the boardroom at the University of Tennessee. It's got butterfly 65 inches coming out of the ceiling, and when they press the button, the screens come out of the ceiling. Anyway, let's get to talking about what, that's my brother there in the middle. Many of you all know him. He's the non-serious part of this business. He's Mr. Electricity, walks into the room, never met a stranger. My wife describes me as boring. So, anyway, let's talk about video conferencing, and we'll answer more questions as we go along. But we gotta respect what's going on. Let me just do something very quickly here. I'm going to text a friend of mine in the industry while we're talking about this here, and he is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'll just have him call in. while we're going through this. Video conferencing and telepresence. Just these are high-level things. You may want to take notes about this, but you hear the buzzwords video conferencing. Video conferencing is when generally one or two are talking, and it's generally involving one camera or two screens. When we work with people like Eastman Chemical, they want telepresence rooms. Telepresence rooms use multiple cameras, multiple screens, and they use spatial sound. Spatial sound means that if somebody on the right-hand side of the room speaks, you hear them coming from the right-hand side of the room. The furniture matches, the paint in the room matches, everything matches. The furniture even resolves into the screen so that, no, you don't ever feel like you're there, but you do get more immersive than you do in this environment. So video conferencing and telepresence only differ primarily in the fact that they differ in the number of cameras. Telepresence is regretfully used generically in a lot of people's discussion about video conferencing, but telepresence is generally the use of more than one camera and in a room that's designed to be more immersive. What are they using it for? Well, they're using it to increase productivity. Bottom line is you can do more in less time. I've got the picture of the workman there. I'm working with one organization that she specializes in consulting people on lubricants for their machines in the industrial environment. Obviously, experts like this are far in between, and what she has set up is technology so that she can have them go out there with their phone and their iPad, turn it on, shine it at the machine, and she can listen. She can hear. And she can tell them what's wrong with that machine because she's that good about knowing about vibration and the way that the machines are handling. That this type of technology just raises the level of productivity. It allows you to be places, more than one place, very, very quickly. Eastman's rooms, let's just say that their rooms are pretty hefty investments. The reason I bring that up is because does it save money? Well, many large companies have a commitment to their stockholders that their senior management will never all travel on the same airplane. They'll never all get on the same. So Eastman has multiple private jets. Eastman has, and when they have worldwide meetings with their senior VPs, they've got multiple transit streams going over there at the same time. Their rooms were real expensive, and they paid for their rooms in less than 3 months, just based on meetings that they didn't have to. David's calling in now. Hey, David.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well, sir. I have a large group of people in 3 different rooms. This is David Kuklinski. He's the Life Size Regional Manager out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I just asked him to join just so that you could just briefly see, how easy it was for somebody to join from a different city. He's sitting in a high-def system as well in his office at his home. But you can see how easily the transition was for him to join thing. David, if you would, just go ahead and speak over top of me so that they can hear that both people can be talking at the same time. That would be time
Absolutely,
for you.
Yeah. We can go back and forth.
Okay, David.
Sorry, Mike.
go ahead.
We can go back and forth. We could argue about sports scores or our favorite sports team, or argue over budget numbers if we had an Excel spreadsheet up here. So,
just
the concept
hey, David,
is that anybody can be present in any location real easily.
David, could you just very briefly, we'd already discussed some of the mobility and other things, but could you just give me, from a manufacturer standpoint, a high level, what are the trends in the use of this video conferencing, like the BYOD and the virtual surfaces and things like the virtual servers and things like that? Just a 50,000-foot, very quick view.
Yeah, absolutely. Life Size Communications is striving constantly to allow universal video collaboration and make it, number one, affordable and scalable. no longer are people willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on just one system in a room, because we do need the ability for everyone in your organization to connect. So people are using, tablets and smartphones. They need to connect into conference room systems, be it in an office or in a conference room like you all are in. And then on the back end, our infrastructure product line is all based upon VMware or Hyper-V. And so what that means for the non-technical folks is that it allows you to deploy this in a virtualized environment. Again, you can scale up in terms of capacity and features. So if you have a small organization with 5 offices today, but in 3 years you grow to 20 offices, you're not literally throwing out dedicated hardware, you're just purchasing and turning on more capacity and features. And so that's really our goal, is to make it affordable, scalable, and ease of use is a big factor. We just introduced a new system, so you all may have some remotes that look like this, and our new remote is this guy right here. It has 5 buttons, so we're trying to make it even easier than it has been. So,
David, I thank you very much. I'll let you go. I really appreciate you breaking into your day over there, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much, David.
Okay, have a great afternoon, and hopefully it's a nice sunny day in Alcoa. So
it
nice
is.
meeting everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, just moving very quick because we're going to run out of time here. Let's talk about some of the benefits. And I think that some of the other things that are often missed is that it allows you to spend more time with the family. Who enjoys getting on an airplane anymore? Who enjoys going through TSA and getting rubbed down? I mean, it's just not. It's just, well, maybe somebody have a fantasy about that. Hey, I'll tell you a good funny one. 2 weeks ago, I was in Vegas and I was speaking at a conference there. And in fact, Robert and I were both speaking at a conference there. And we were coming back through Vegas, and I'm sure most of you have been here to Vegas. There was some gentleman there who had obviously played professional basketball. He was in the 6'10", 7-foot category. Hardly fit in the dome where you had to stick your. And when his hands went up, it was like this. But the funny part was when he evidently went off in the beeper, and the guy that was to do the general rub down couldn't reach his shoulder blades. He couldn't. His shoulder blades was where this showed up, and the guy could not reach high enough to reach his shoulder blades. It was hilarious watching that. It was just. I mean, only at the airport. All right. Let's go ahead with the growth here with video conferencing is phenomenal because it's used in all of the areas of business, education, healthcare, military. The growth just continues to go up. It's used for presentations, training, telemedicine, telecommuting, legal depositions. This room rents out all the time for legal depositions. Lawyers come in here and they bring in their clients, and they bring in professional witnesses, and they sit in here and they don't have to travel all over the country to get experts. Things that I want to talk about, you ask about tips. Let's talk about some of them right here. The basics of video conferencing is you have to have a camera, a microphone, some type of user interface, some type of video display, and a speaker. But past that, these are the things that make a difference. Lighting in the room, command and control, like in here, I've got the ability to turn on and off the lights and shut everybody off in just a second. But in the and I'll turn the lights on back on just a second. These professional lights they have an automatic reset button that don't let you turn them back on immediately. But the point is, you want to make it an experience. Like, for instance, in executive conference rooms, they never reach and grab a remote. What actually happens is the admin will schedule in Outlook the call. It will know the resources that are necessary. It will make the call to the other location. All the screens will be up and running. They walk into the room, they talk to the person and walk out. They never touch a remote. That's the way it really happens in today's video conferencing world. It's no longer a fairy tale. It really does happen that way. The biggest challenge is bandwidth. You generally need at least 1 megabyte of bandwidth for every HD stream that you're going to connect. So if you're going to connect 3 or 4 people at one time, What does that translate in plain English? One T1 coming into your facility will not host multiple people trying to collaborate at one time, because that's one up and one down for every person that you're talking to in HD. Now, bandwidth is getting cheap. Bandwidth has got cheaper. So bandwidth today is serving less and less a challenge, but you just need to kind of lock that magic number in. If you want an HD experience, it's got to be, you got to designate at least 1 megabyte up and down. I'm going to have Robert speak in just a second about multicast and unicast enabled networks and how that affects stuff. The biggest gotcha out there by far in video conferencing is the disrespecting of firewalls. That's the reason that you just can't walk in someplace and plop your piece of equipment down, plug it into the network jack, and just think it's going to work. If you don't have consideration before, or you're not working with something that knows how to traverse firewalls, it's the biggest gotcha out there. And firewalls, you just have to work with someone, or you work with a product that automatically understands how to traverse firewalls. And I know you didn't come here to get geeked out on that. Bridging is the ability to join lots and lots of people at once. You asked the question, Mike, earlier about how many people can you connect at once. Well, through what is called bridging, you can connect on some bridges up to 96 or 100 people if you got $250,000 and a lot of bandwidth. The fact of the matter is that it becomes impractical. If I had 6 or 7 people in this video conference, there would be one person taking up 70% of the screen, and the other people would be tiled around the bottom. And the person speaking, they would automatically be flushed to the bigger person. It's called voice-activated conferencing and such. But that's the way it really happens. But you can federate, fancy term for you can hook multiple bridges together, and so that you can make that environment of going to hundreds. It's not realistic. Content sharing, we're obviously sharing content, recording at the same time. I can share my PowerPoint, I can turn it off in a few minutes and just go back to people. I do want you to know that there are still a few people, especially in Europe, that use ISDN. The old world, the old connections were made point to point, not through the internet or not through IP environments. So I just want you to know that there are some times that you may need something called a gateway. A gateway is a device that allows you to translate ISDN or 323 world to 320 world. You don't have to remember that. The point is there's a difference between ISDN and IP-based video conferencing. Interoperability. This is a big one. Someone asked the question earlier. Is Skype, GoToMeeting, WebEx, Vimeo, video. I could speak for 10 minutes on all the variations. The key is interoperability. Interoperability is the ability for different systems to talk across platforms. There are standards out there in the world that people like Polycom, Lifesize, Cisco, and others have adopted that allows all to talk to each other. The biggest standard out there is called 323, and if you wanted to write that down and say, if you were ever going to invest in video conferencing system, you need to know, is your system compatible with 2 things? Is it SIP? Is it 323? And if they say yes, then you're talking current industry standards, and you can talk to 90% of the world's true standards-based video conferencing. Now, let's talk about the world that's not standard-based. You might say, well, is Skype not standards-based? No, Skype is not standards-based. In fact, they're a very close community. And they have their own protocol. They're great, they're inexpensive, and if you can live with that, that's a really great tool. And all the other ones out there that are using their various different technologies, they just don't play well in the sandbox with standards-based environments. So you end up, people can't talk to people. This is something you might want to write down. There are many sites. The biggest one out there is called Blue Jeans. Blue Jeans is a collaboration website resource that will allow you to bridge all of those unlikes to like each other. So a Skype can talk to a SIP, to a 320, to a video that's talking 265. I know these are big buzzwords. You don't have to memorize them. You just have to know that there's companies out there that make a living doing nothing but bridging services between unlike services. But if you're gonna make, boy, that's good English again. if one is going to make an investment in video conferencing, one would need to consider standards-based environments, and 323 and SIP are standards. There are many systems out there that are, boy, that's, I'm really got the bad Southerns today. Many of the newer based video conferencing systems are using the cloud as the bridge. And you will see this evolve more and more. Cloud-based SaaS things which you pay for as you need them, they're going to become more and more a part. More things are being virtualized. I'm sure many of you all in your businesses already have VM-based servers or virtual or Hyper-V-based servers. These, instead of having many boxes and data centers anymore, it's, you know, that old thing, somebody moved my cheese, somebody changed the world paradigm shift. Well, data centers, they've had their paradigm shift in there because, you know, instead of now one server for one application, now there's one server with software running on it that allows it to act like many servers, and it creates a virtual environment. The video conferencing world is doing the same thing. It's virtualizing, losing number of boxes, going to fewer boxes because the boxes are faster and they can multitask, and you just need to know that it's out there. These are the gotchas, quality of connections. These are the most likely it's low bandwidth that'll cause your user experience to be bad. Usability, that is when you've got too many buttons on a remote control and you can't figure out which one. Lighting conditions, the clothes you wear. Sharing content. Oh, here's a good one. Anybody here ever heard of HDCP compliance? Oh, it's that wonderful thing that Hollywood did to us when they protected Blu-ray and DVDs from being copied. Okay, but I want you to know that, you know, you might think, well, you ask the question, can we share maps? Can we share documents? Can we do other things like that? The answer is yes. Something you can't share. Hook up a Blu-ray player and tell them you want to play a video across and let the other people see it. Won't go there because the HDCP compliance world says you've got to have an exchange of things called keys, and it won't go across video conferencing. So you just need to know not all things cross the world of video conferencing. So you can't assume that anything that's video can just play across the other way. You can't assume that they're interoperable. You can if they're 323 or SIP, but you can't otherwise. Firewall traversal and sound quality. I've already mentioned to you that HD sound quality. Your expectations for investments. Free Skype, all the way up to entry-level HD conferencing rooms of about $3,000 is as inexpensive, and I spend my $1 bills just like you do. So I don't treat $3,000 as throwaway. But when I did my first video conferencing rooms 12 to 15 years ago, they were all $100,000 plus. Today, I can do more with $3,000 than I could with 4 or 5 of those $100,000 rooms then. So when I speak of $3,000, I'm talking about a quality experience like this at HD quality for as inexpensive as $3,000. Room systems start in the $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 environment. Just to give you ballpark environments, what's invested. Now streaming is another technology we talk about in just a second, and you can get into it and be able to stream to many, and the investments are very similar. I've talked here about bandwidth. The main thing is I put it down and gave you it as a handout so that you could walk away with it. But the main thing is to recognize that the more bandwidth you have, the greater flexibility and quality. The displays and everything else, the infrastructure in the room, I would just encourage, if you are talking to somebody about video conferencing and they have done it at all, they will understand some basic design parameters. Like, do you notice that I'm looking at this camera at eye level? I'm seeing you at eye level. In people that haven't done video conferencing, they'll stick the camera way up there on the roof or over there to the right-hand side. And so it's like TV. If you are not looking at the person that you're speaking to and making eye contact, it's very distracting. It's not okay. And so you can start judging yourself when you walk into a room that's got video conferencing. Has that person ever done this before? You can expect the return on investment with most people in the 3 to 6 month category. You can expect greater efficiency, improve morale, because when you can allow family to be together, well, now some people just want to get out of town. Okay, I can see that. But the point is that with video conferencing, this is so important. Video conferencing will never replace the face-to-face first handshake meeting in which nonverbal communication expresses just as much as what is said. So I'm never going to suggest that video conferencing is for interviewing somebody that is going to be a long-term relationship. Now, it may be for, if you've got masses you got to go through. You've got one company that's using this for the purpose of what they're called the talent manager, and they just do nothing but hire people, and they use this as a screening device. But in a true business relationship, that first meeting needs to be face-to-face, hand-to-hand. But all those project meetings afterwards, all of those ongoing stuff, stay home with the family. The efficiencies here with gas costing $3.50, $4 or $5, it's just a big time payoff. You're just going to be able to participate in more opportunities. What's driving the growth? The economic client, the business drivers, the ability to collaborate, and the user experience is just coming up. You hear well, you see well. Flexibility. Robert, I'm gonna, as we get into this, which room, Robert, which room are you in? I can. Oh, there you are. You were hiding. I can see the room, but I couldn't see you. Okay, so you're in the digital signage room. In just a few minutes, I'm going to ask Robert to collaborate with me and to kind of teach part of this here. But we're going to talk about streaming just a second. So, video conferencing, one-to-one, one-to-a-few, real-time, dynamic. That's what video conferencing is. It's very important to understand standards. It's the most important criteria is good bandwidth. Now we're going to shift here to that one-to-many. Just like there are people right now that are watching this via streaming. And the words that they're hearing right now, I actually said 6 or 7 seconds ago. Because that's just the nature of streaming. But the beauty of this is they are able to hear it in almost a real-time environment, and you're not limited to 1, 2, 5. You can do it by the hundreds. Now, in the streaming environment, it embraces the same type of technology, a codec, which is a compression and decompression thing. Basically, it takes the raw material of the video and audio and the data, compresses it way down, and that technology keeps getting better, compresses it way down, and allows it to travel over the network and come to the other end, and then it blows it back up. And in the case of streaming, it uses your computer, it uses your phone, it uses a software device to allow it to expand, or a software codec. And the applications for it are meetings and event broadcasts, training and education, TV and video distribution. Today, instead of running, you have a large corporation or any corporation, and you're wanting to have your video cameras, all places. You're wanting to have TV, instead of people to be able to view Fox or whatever that you're wanting to view out there on a dynamic basis during an emergency. You can use streaming devices to bring those pieces of information directly to people's desks. You can use it in the digital signage environment. Instead of buying digital signage for every single location, use one digital signage player and stream that digital signage player, and it can go as many places as you've got network connections. But at any rate, it's the infrastructure there. I really put it there so that you can just carry it away, because we're going to run out of time here to talk. So, Robert, I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you just briefly jump in here and speak to probably the one most important item of technical consideration of streaming application. That is network consideration, specifically addressing unicast and multicasting enabled networks.
You're doing such a good job. I was just going to let you keep going. But in terms of streaming, really, I think one of the big considerations to streaming inside an internal network is whether you have a multicast enabled network. Several years ago, before you had multicast, if you wanted to hit several desktops inside your own building, then you would take whatever that stream is, and maybe it's a 7 megabyte stream, and maybe you're trying to hit 10 desktops. Then the bandwidth you're taking up inside your building is, 7 times 10, you're taking up 70 megabytes per second. But now with multicast, and as long as you have your switches and routers multicast enabled, you're only taking up that 7 megabytes per second for that HD stream to each desktop, because each of the switches and routers are handling, duplicating that to each person that it's supposed to go to. So you've drastically reduced what you've got loading down your backbone, and so that's the way you want to go, is multicast anytime inside your internal network. Now you can't do that to the outside network through your firewalls and out your WAN, but just internally now using a multicast technology, it's so much more bandwidth friendly, and one source going to multiple places takes up very little bandwidth.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Robert. The question was asked earlier. What about? And Robert, I'll ask you to answer this one because Robert runs our streaming and our digital signage sides of the business. He's my oldest son. He didn't have much of a choice. He blesses me because he's far surpassed my knowledge of this stuff. Would you address the application of streaming internal versus streaming to external applications, like like a church streaming to its members versus a corporation streaming to its internal employees?
Sure, and you've, I think, to a certain extent already kind of discussed in general some of the technologies used there. If you were going internal, it's what we had just talked about with multicast. As long as you've got a multicast enabled network, it's going to be pretty simple, and at least in terms of bandwidth usage. And there's a lot of great companies out there, anywhere from Xterity to Visionary Solutions, and several others that make their focus for the most part doing internal streaming, and you would just use I guess it really depends on what your goal is. If you want to create IPTV, then your source is maybe a Comcast box or something like that, and then you're going to use an encoder to take that source and put it on your network. Then at that point, there's ways that you can view it just at a desktop level by opening up Internet Explorer, one of your browsers, something of that nature. And then there's also set-top boxes that you can put behind large screens and have them have a list of channels that is basically all your IPTV channels. And this is already used very commonly inside places like hospitals that are moving towards IPTV as opposed to actual digital channels running from Comcast to all their locations. And you have a lot more control there. You can force certain locations to only be able to watch certain screens or even track who is watching what. So IPTV gives you a lot more capabilities in reference to that. If you're maybe a church and you want to broadcast your live service to maybe 200 people on Sunday or something like that who are possibly shut-ins or just people who couldn't make it, then you would use what you've already referred to as a CDN, content delivery network. And there's several of those out there. Akamai is probably the most known, but StreamView and several others that will allow you to just set up what we already talked about before, an encoder, and you're going to run the main output coming off of your camera system into that and send that single unicast stream out to your CDN on the network. And then it's going to basically put your stream out there to where you can view it from a web browser. So you'll pull up your iPad or your desktop computer and just go to whatever the specific address is that the church has sent out, and that's being handled by the CDN.
How many can you broadcast out to on the...
Through a CDN?
Yes.
Really depends on the CDN. I mean, using Akamai, you could go to thousands.
I mean, when they...
Absolutely. Yeah, because they've got servers in the U.S. in several areas, and they've also got servers in Europe, so it really depends on the CDN that you choose.
Yeah, I mean, things like the Masters golf tournament and stuff like that, they're streaming literally to hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands all simultaneously.
What would the equipment cost to be able to broadcast out to?
It can be as little as a streaming encoder could cost as little as $1,000, and then go on up from there. So there are some that, and that one would even handle HD. So the technology is not extremely expensive anymore. If you're talking about doing it internally, you're probably looking at something that can handle multicast and do it well, like an Xterity encoder, a high def one, probably $2, $3, $4 grand, somewhere in that range, just for the actual encoder to put that one channel on your network. And then you might invest in a server which handles giving you the web browser to go to. The investment there may be 3 to 5 or 8, somewhere in that range. So
your company does that as part of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And then the CDN services are all based on bandwidth needs, so you can. But again, the bandwidth is cheap. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 cents per user or something like that. We're talking inexpensive out there to reach the hundreds and the masses. So the leverage of bandwidth today is just amazing. But
hey, Mike, we have a question in this room.
Go ahead, Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question. Aren't there licensing issues as far as I can't just take a Fox News or something and stream that out to as many folks as I want. If I've got a Comcast box, what are the issues? Because I've been told you can't just do that. You've got to have licensing. You got to pay licensing fees and that kind of thing.
Okay, that's a great question. Robert actually spoke on that subject in Vegas just 2 weeks ago. Robert, go ahead.
Sure. That's a great question, and certainly kind of a big gotcha in that area of doing IPTV. If you're creating your own source, then you don't have anything to worry about there. If you're a church and you're creating your own channel or something like that from your messages, and that's one thing. But like you said, if you're using somebody's live TV channel, that's a totally different scenario. In a lot of cases, what you have to do is just go to your provider, whether that's Comcast or whether that's DirecTV, and work with them to create you some sort of contract that can be signed off on, to where you pay them a certain small fee up front, which is going to be quite a bit less than it might cost you in the long run if you got in any sort of litigation. So those sort of things can absolutely be worked out with the providers, and it certainly does cost something, and you want to make sure you do that up front.
I have a question. Sure. If you're streaming out to thousands of people, and it's going one direction from you out to those thousands, if any one of those 1,000 people wanted to ask a question, would they be able to ask that question, or would I have the ability to see the question prior to, so they don't need to be on the screen, but others can hear, I can repeat the question, or others can hear the question?
Sure. A lot of these technologies, especially working with CDNs, because you're talking about going to thousands, and the only real way right now to do that is by using a CDN for the most part. And well, I guess you could do that multicasting internally as well, but using a CDN, a lot of times they have kind of a chat feature. So if you were wanting to have some sort of interactivity there, either you yourself would have your laptop up logged in to where you can see that list of chat questions that may be coming up, or you might have somebody supporting you sitting there watching those. So yeah,
so you don't actually hear the other person. You can read the chat question and then respond.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that would be the main way to do that right now.
Very good.
Yes, we have a question here. We'll get. I'm sorry. Let's get the small boardroom. Go ahead.
Smart TV and IPTV, they one and the same. The smart TV technology people are putting in their homes and able to do multifunction things with their television above their fireplace. Are they kind of one and the same, or?
Great question. Smart. Go ahead, Robert. You can answer.
Okay. Well, to me, smart TV is really kind of to a certain extent, it's a marketing term, but it definitely refers to the technology that's in a lot of TVs that are sold now. And I don't really consider them that closely related to IPTV. In some cases, they can. The smart TVs can definitely pull down live streams that can be from TV. Maybe that's a Hulu or something like that. But I think it's very different than kind of the IP streaming we're talking about here internally or to desktops. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the smart TV is generally where they have built-in processors and stuff like that. And I tell you, the next big trend in the immersive multimedia experience, and it was demonstrated in spades in Vegas at the CES show, is called the Bump experience, and that's where they're called near-field technologies, where people are walking up and sharing content by just getting close to the device and actually bumping the screen. I mean, you've seen the phones that bump, but this is the idea of you've got a 70-inch screen in your home, and you walk up and you've got pictures you want to show, and you bump it with your phone, and then it becomes engaged in parallel with your phone. It's really, really way cool technology. You had a question.
Yeah. Can you encode the stream so that if you're going from campus to campus and you don't want to broadcast, can you encode the stream and then undecode it at another location?
Yes, absolutely. Are you talking about going through a WAN? So you've got to go through firewalls and out through the external internet to your other location. Is that, you're asking if that's possible, or?
That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. You would basically use some sort of edge device from whatever IPTV company you're working with and send a unicast stream across the outside web to the next location, and then that could be turned back into a multicast stream at that location to go to several endpoints.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let's so that we at least hit the third topic, because I want to cover everybody in our discussion. Let's cover digital signage just for a second. Digital signage. First off, the nomenclature was a mess up from the very start. We should have recognized that traditional printers using big format digital printers had been producing what they call digital signage for years. And when we invaded their marketplace with flat panels and called it digital signage, it created confusion in the marketplace. I'm really sad that the industry as a whole picked the terminology called digital signage, but we should be calling it something else. We choose to call it dynamic digital signage. When you walked in the front lobby, you saw the video ribbon there, that's digital signage. When you saw the screens in the hallways, that's digital signage. It's the idea of delivering the right content to the right person at the right time. All of it, it's the idea of taking away, it's not PowerPoint. PowerPoint is a great person-driven environment where you are driving the content to your people that you're presenting to, but you're driving it just like I'm doing right now. But what is the worst thing relative to a sign, whether it be printed or dynamic? You walk up to it and it is presenting an event that took place yesterday or last week or 2 weeks ago. That just totally destroys the benefit or the credibility of that platform. Digital signage removes that challenge out of it, because when you create content in digital signage with what is called content management software, you create the ability to say this piece of content is valid up until this particular time on this particular day, and then it automatically removes itself. So it automatically removes the most challenging of its things. But the cool part about it is it's basically the ability to use a computer to drive content across screens anywhere, anytime, and to make sure that content is always fresh. These are some of the applications for digital signage. Wayfinding. Some of the great wayfinding applications that are coming out. Look for it in the very near future, to where you will walk in to a facility and there will be a screen there that you'll walk up to, and it will encourage you to come over to it for the purpose of wayfinding, and you will wave your phone, your iPhone or your Droid or your pad, and an application will download to your phone, and it will become your wayfinding tool as you navigate the elevators or multiple buildings on campus, and you'll know exactly where you are at the time. And then even better, when you touch something along the way, it tells you what you just saw. So all of these applications are they're real right now, but they're used for flight informations in airports. The beauty around digital signage is it's pulling stuff real time. What would be the use to go to an airport to look up at a screen if the information there was only updated every hour? That wouldn't work out too well. Of course, I've sometimes missed airplanes because they didn't look at it every hour. But the fact of the matter is that the flight information, meeting room signs to tell you what's going on in rooms. We use it for introducing people coming to our building and wayfinding in here, emergency messaging. This is one of the big growing topics. Several years ago, one of our customers had, they were in the path of a tornado that, cut to the chase, is within a couple of 100 yards. This large tornado went by, and to their people's internal to this big steel plant, didn't even know it. They were within feet of life endangerment, and nothing was. They didn't have a system in place. Now they had the blinky lights, and they had the other devices that the law required them, the very minimal part. But in a steel manufacturing environment, for that case, a lot of environments, that just wasn't enough. And this storm went by, and as a result, we went back in there and implemented a digital signage system that somebody can essentially hit the big red button, and it tells them that there's an emergency, blinky, blinky, and it communicates. I do want you to capture the fact that digital signage can be specific in the fact that it can, in the event, you know, I was speaking in Vegas 2 weeks ago at a large a convention out there, and I had about 70 people in there. In fact, one of the people was from Boston, the mass transit system, and we've been talking to them. But they were talking about the fact that digital signage has to be more than just blinky, blinky, tell you there's an emergency. It also has to be specific to location so that it doesn't have you running into harm's way. So that, in other words, when you have a campus environment, you know, there is no place that you can say, not in my community anymore, not at my theater anymore, not at my school system anymore, not on my airplane anymore. The fact of the matter is, we're all susceptible to these things no matter where you live, small town, big town. And digital signage and integrating it with emergency notification is one of the big ones that's out there. It's used for these applications, and again, just being respectful. These, I'll leave you with this. If you were ever going to do digital signage and want to consider that, if there's one page in this whole sheet of paper that I've handed you, this is the page, this is the thing that if you'll touch every one of these boxes in a digital signage application, you can have a successful digital signage deployment. Miss one of these boxes, and I almost guarantee you're wasting your money. There have been so many failed digital signage systems out there, and you can track it down to one of these boxes. The most common one, a lack of commitment to good content. And that's at the top of the circle up there. But anyway, I will. Ed is sort of sticking his hand up by his motions around the room that our time is closing. The benediction is closed. But I wanted to, in closing here, do we have any closing questions that we want to offer up? Any closing questions? You all have been more than gracious. I hope that this immersive experience in the use of video conferencing, because this could just as easily been you sitting in a different city. I mean, you're sitting across the hallway, so we can reach out and shake hands afterwards. But the fact of the matter is, with this type of technology, this type of interaction, and this has been really interactive today. We have questions that have come from every single room. You all have been able to hear them real time. We've answered them real time. That's what I want you to leave with. I don't want you to leave with the idea that it's something else. Read the email with my blind eyes. Oh, I see you. Somebody is watching. Okay.
My wife.
Okay. Okay. Well, to those that are out there streaming, thank you for joining us during this time period. Ed I will be making available to him the recorded version of this, so that if you want others that were in your organization that are not able to attend, or if there were parts of this that you want to review, it's like a DVR when you get it. You'll be able to rush through it. You'll be able, what's even way cooler than that, I think it's way cool, is the fact that whatever layout that you watched here, we watched it with a split screen. If you want to go back and watch it and you just want to watch the PowerPoint, don't have to look at my face the entire time, you can right then on the recorded media change the stream to just watch the PowerPoint, so you don't even have to watch it. Now, if we were a teacher, I could tell how long you watched it and what screen you watched it on. Now that's pretty cool. Okay. But anyway, I really appreciate. I hope that it's been beneficial to you all. I hope that it's that you've considered a good use of your time. I really appreciate your investment. I know coming to Alcoa Alkilia Highway is very dangerous, but I really appreciate that. Ed, do you have closing remarks?
Yeah, thanks to Mike and Robert and the family and all the team he has put the food together. Certainly, you've been most gracious and allowed us to come into your home. As we're trying to simulate being in different parts of the country today, but in reality, we're here. And so if you have other questions today or you want to come back another time and talk to Mike and talk about your particular needs, I'm sure he'd be more than welcome to work with you. And just sit down and see what your real issues are and if they can help you. But thank you. I think it's been a great experience and hope we do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, donut hole.